product labeled Made in America. It came with a 50-page manual, 3 safety warnings, and a heartfelt apology for the outsourced parts. So there you go. That's ChatGPT today. Hi, everybody. I'm Molly Burgess. I'm the Executive Director for the Manufacturers Council. And you probably all know we're a 501c3 focused on education for manufacturers and for the public at large, particularly students that might be interested in going into manufacturing careers. And we do a lot of workforce training based activities. We watch for our Digital Whistle newsletter, which is scheduled to come out tomorrow. If you're not receiving that, you can go to our website, and there's a link there to sign up for the newsletter or to just ask us questions if you have through our website. Website also has a list of events that are upcoming and how to become a member. I want to thank two of our major sponsors. One of those is CMTC, and Barbara Weg is a representative today from CMTC. They are a great source throughout the state of California to manufacturers for all kinds of training issues. And also I'd like to thank RP&B CPAs in Riverside. They have worked with us for over 15 years every year, helping us out with all of our taxes and documents. They've been absolutely fabulous. And I want to introduce Sarah Johnson. She's our Events Operations Director. She's going to tell you a little bit about what's coming up, and then we will go around and do a self-introduction. But we'll start with Sarah.
Sure. Vincent, are you able to pull up the events to share so people can see? Sure. And I can talk while that happens. So we have a handful of events coming up, and I will send a list to everyone after this webinar, but just a couple to keep in mind. So Friday, July 25th, we're going to do a tour at Aranda Tooling. There are only 20 spots, so be sure to register when you get the link. It is a free event, but be sure to register for that immediately. And then the next one is our Port of LA tour and networking. That's going to be on Tuesday, August 5th. That's going to be about a 2-hour event, and we will have networking, hors d'oeuvres, drinks, and that sort of thing. Just a fun day out on the boat. So if you want to get away from the office for a little bit. And then
that's a fabulous tour. Yeah. You just feel like a peanut with all these huge ships around you.
Yeah, it should be a fun event. And then on Thursday, August 21st, we're going to do an ESOP and Success Strategy Social, and that's actually with RP&B, which Molly had just mentioned is our accounting firm, but they are the speaker and sponsor for that. And food and beverage will be available for that as well, and that will be in Riverside. And then our fun event that we kind of want to turn into kind of a summer social, September is still kind of summer, is our Top Golf networking event. And that's going to be in partnership with Women in Manufacturing in the California chapter. The Frito-Lay is a sponsor of that, and so is CMTC. And for those on here that are members of MCIE, there is a discount code for you. So email me after. If you want to attend, I'll get you that discount code. And then just also so you know, there are 10 students from Cal Poly Pomona that will be attending as well. So they get to mingle with people in the industry. And then our next event is Tuesday, October 7th through the 9th. So this is a summit that Launch Apprenticeship is putting on. It's a 3-day event. And then on October 7th, MCIE is co-hosting a reception with them that evening. So I put in the registration link for their 3-day conference if you wanted to be part of that or the whole 3 days. And then we will be sending out our registration for the reception shortly for that. And then just to save the date for 2026, because we're already planning for that. So we just had our 2nd annual manufacturing charity golf event on June 2nd of this year. And that was at the Bear Valley Country Club in Victorville. And that was a fun day out. It was perfect weather. We had 100 people playing golf. We raffled off a Fender guitar We had tons of raffle items, I think more than a TV and speakers and all sorts of things. And we had a golf cannon on course. And the cool thing is we raised $50,000. And part of those proceeds goes to scholarships for students wanting a career in manufacturing. So our next tournament will be on Monday, June 1st, 2026. So registration is already open. So when you go there, you can sign up for a team, but also sponsorships as well. And then our last two events, we are just solidifying the final details, is Thursday, September 1st, will be an open house at Moreno Valley College, who we have a partnership with. And then to end the year, why not do a holiday party and networking and get together on November 13th. So if you guys have any questions on any of those, let me know. But also if you guys would like to do a tour or know of a company that would like to give a tour, even in 2026, we're always looking for those sorts of opportunities. And then we also have sponsorship opportunities available as well.
Thanks, Sarah. That's an amazing lineup of stuff to do. We're starting to fill our 2026 calendar and through the winter. So we're looking for suggestions, if you have any, about what you would like to hear or learn about. So I'd like to introduce Wally, and then he can self-introduce. Wally Britheny is the president of the Manufacturers Council. Go ahead, Wally. We'll do introductions.
Sure. Okay. Wally Britheny, and I'll just say I was at the groundbreaking on Monday for the SoCal Oasis project at UC Riverside. That will be on University Avenue outside the main campus. It's the first building devoted strictly to economic development at the UC Riverside campus, and we hope to have occupancy by the end of next year or the end of 2026. So, but it was quite impressive. We do hope to use that facility for meetings and also for showing technology for smart manufacturing that we'll need some special facilities for. By the way, it will be operated pretty much by the College of Engineering at UC Riverside, and if you're familiar with CSERT, the Center for Environmental Research and Technology, that facility has the world's largest atmospheric chamber. They're going to be building, although they won't be by next year, the comparable atmospheric chamber at the new site. And that will be something impressive to see, to help keep our California air much cleaner than it was back in the 1970s and thereabouts. So that's some of the activities that we're watching closely and will be participating in. Next, go on if we would. Kimberly, you want to introduce yourself?
You're muted, Kimberly.
Yep, sorry about that. Hi, I'm Kimberly Clark. I am the Corporate Vice President and General Manager of Walker Manufacturing Group, with our location out here in Ontario, California. We're a metal stamper, and we've been around for 75 years.
And Joe, can you unmute and say hello, introduce yourself? We can't see if Joe's there. Okay, somebody's on an iPhone. We don't know who. Oh, here's Joe.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm on an iPhone. I was just gonna listen, but I'm the controller for Do It American Manufacturing in Corona.
Great. Do It America. Great. Thanks for joining us today. So you are also the iPhone, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then Rocio?
Hi, Rocio Leon with CMTC. I'm just excited to see what I can learn on today's call. Thank you.
Great, great. Shadab?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Shadab. I'm the president of ServTech Plastics. We do custom injection molding out here in Ontario, California, and excited to be on the call today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And Tony?
Hi, this is Tony Martinez. I'm VP with ASCM, Inland Empire. That's the Association for Supply Chain Management. We do supply chain and manufacturing training, professional certifications. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. And Ron,
I'm Ron Burgess. My company is Burgess Management Consulting. I have worked with manufacturers over the last 35 or so years, including Wally's company, and had several others in the Inland Empire. Plus, I still do a lot of work in Colorado, manufacturing operation there.
thank you. And Vincent is our MCIE staff, and he's running the show. I don't know that you have anything to say, Vincent, but you could say something if you wish.
I'll just be handling the media. That's it.
Okay, great. And so then finally, we'll go ahead and introduce Barbara Weg. So glad that you're here with us today, Barbara.
We
To talk about.
we have somebody, Becky Barajas, that joined us.
I didn't see that. Becky, go ahead.
Hi there. Well, I just joined, so I'm not sure. Are we doing introductions?
Yes,
Okay.
self-intros.
Oh, okay, nice. I'm Becky Barajas. I'm with the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
So, Build America, Buy America information session. What is it? And what can we learn about it? We have Barbara Weg here, a supply chain consultant, and also working with CMTC, as I mentioned before. She has been in supply chain consulting for over 30 years. So are you ready to go, Barbara?
I am. I'm sure
Great.
Vincent has my deck.
Yep, Vincent can go ahead with that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the introduction and great to meet everybody. For those of you who aren't familiar with CMTC, we're California's MEP Center, which is a public-private partnership under the umbrella of the Department of Commerce, NIST. It's our firm's mission, as Molly mentioned, to serve as trusted advisors, providing solutions that increase the productivity and competitiveness of California manufacturers. As mentioned in the introduction, I have 30 some odd years of contract manufacturing experience, primarily in the metal finishing and fabrication space, and I specialize in global sourcing and procurement. So over the past few months, we've had many inquiries from clients about wanting to promote and market that they manufacture projects that would be considered compliant to the Build America, Buy America Act, or BABA requirements. This deck is a compilation of slides that myself and my supply chain counterparts in 3 other MEP centers across the nation, we presented a version of this at the Supply Chain Best Practices meeting to the MEP National Network in March. Next slide, please. So, of course, we like to remind folks that this webinar is informational and should not be considered legal, financial, or professional advice. We're presenting best practices based on our understanding of the current situation and publications, and then these tools may continue to evolve as our understanding and applications change. Next slide, please. So today we're going to discuss a little overview of BABA, including waivers. We'll review details and examples of the 3 categories published in the BABA memorandum, which is manufactured products, iron and steel products, and construction materials. And then we have some examples of companies that are actively marketing their BABA compliant products. And then, of course, we'll field questions at the end. Next slide, please. So from a macro perspective, if you want to bid on a federal infrastructure project, the agency that's issuing the purchase order or providing financial assistance will provide the details and guidelines that they want followed. And even though the language of the requirements outlined in the BABA memorandum is consistent, each agency may have their own little tweaks, their own worksheets and specific documentation that they require to show compliance. Next slide, please. So although I'm going to highlight manufactured products, I wanted to make sure to include the slides and examples regarding iron and steel products, as well as the construction materials. So this is an excerpt from the published BABA memorandum addressing the 3 categories listed. And I can also provide a copy of the memorandum as well as the BABA guidance fact sheet for anyone who would like to have a copy, or I can just send it to Molly and then she can distribute it with this deck if that's what you do at the end of this webinar. So based upon our clients' requests, we decided to parse out section 2, which is manufactured products, and create a process flow with instructions and a worksheet that our clients could use to determine and or potentially engineer products that could be considered BABA compliant. So here's the excerpt from the BABA memorandum stating that all manufactured products used in covered projects must be produced in the United States, and that the cost of the components of the manufactured product that are mined, produced, or manufactured in the US are greater than 55% of the total cost of all its components. Later in the presentation, I'm going to provide details and examples of iron and steel products and construction materials as well. Next slide, please. So I know my big question was, and as was a lot of our clients, was that we needed to address were, do all of the components of the manufactured product required have to be produced in the US? And we were able to extract from the BABA guidance fact sheet that compliance does not require all the components to be produced in the United States. It just has to be 55% of the total cost. Next slide, please. So the fact sheet further provides instructions as to the details to be considered when calculating the cost of the components. As you can see here, for components purchased by the manufacturer, the guidance instructs to use door-to-door landed cost. So that means that if the component is purchased domestically, the inbound freight is included in the purchase price. If the component is purchased internationally, the landed cost includes purchase price, freight, customs clearance fees, and ground transportation. For components manufactured by the company, you can include landed cost and applicable overhead, but you cannot include direct labor or profit. Next slide, please. So one of our biggest challenges in many sectors is that we do not yet have the domestic supply chain infrastructure built out to produce certain high volume or technology-based components. And this is where an organization may need to apply for a BABA waiver. As you can see here, there are specific guidelines listed, but it's really the federal agency, again, that will have the last word as to whether or not your firm's application to manufacture under a waiver is approved. As you can see from the first example listed, you could apply for a waiver if it's found that applying the domestic content procurement preference is inconsistent with the public interest. So this could mean that there's an overall non-availability of those domestic products, or there would be unreasonable cost increases. So for example, a waiver could be considered if incorporating domestic products would significantly raise the overall project cost, generally by more than 25%. In addition, a waiver might be considered if the project delays and disruptions would prevent the timely delivery of the essential services. So the waiver steps usually include proof that you've made domestic sourcing efforts. So as of late, I've been assisting quite a few companies as well as city and county agencies with the steps as to how to post their supplier scouting opportunities, or we call them SSOs, on the MEP national network. And then those responses, or lack thereof, will be part of what is used to potentially apply for a waiver if needed. And of course, there is also the opportunity that you may in fact find a domestic supplier that matches your needs through posting your opportunity on the MEPNN. And I'm happy, again, to provide assistance for anyone who's interested in finding out more about how to do that, whether for a waiver or if you want to do some direct supplier scouting. We can post an opportunity and the entire nation will be able to have exposure to that. Next slide, please. So here you can see some examples of manufactured products. I won't read through all of them, but if you look at the last example, this is very similar to a project I'm currently working on for Caltrans under the authority of the Department of Transportation, or DOT. In this example, the company is manufacturing LED lighting for public roads. As mentioned earlier, the assembly must occur in the US and 55% of the materials must be domestically produced. So you can use imported components as well, but they may not exceed 45% of the total costs. Next slide, please. And then we created a very, very simple Excel worksheet that our clients could use alongside their bill of materials to easily calculate the total percent of US manufactured costs. So in this example, you can see that the total cost of this fantastic box, as we call it, is $7.05, and the landed cost for the imported components is $2.05. So the US manufactured content is almost 71%, well above the 55% threshold for required compliance. So for those of our clients that have initiated the BABA discussion with us, we've been suggesting they pull up a few SKUs and do this quick analysis just to get an initial baseline of where they are before making any big sourcing decisions. And this was a very basic worksheet we created. I'm happy to send a copy of this Excel to anyone who's interested as well. Next slide, please. So if at first glance, the math does not pan out initially, a company could drill down a bit further on their bill of material. In the best case scenario, we're able to help our clients reshore the imported components by qualifying a domestic supplier. However, if that's not an option, we suggest they work with their manufacturer, freight forwarder, and customs broker to see if they could maybe explore tearing down the imported component to refine the harmonized tariff schedule code for that particular item. So for example, if the component you're importing is comprised of an assembled 60% metal frame with a 40% glass electronic insert, then maybe these two items could be torn down and shipped and invoiced separately, and then perhaps tariffed at different rates. Then they would be assembled in the US. Or maybe the metal frame portion of the assembly could be reshored economically. So that is just one example of engineering to achieve better tariff rates. And this is just related to the tariff rate for that particular product. Remember, the country of origin rates that are still in flex, those are stacked on top of that. So that could be an opportunity to maybe even nearshore, or we've been doing a lot of friendshoring lately to achieve better lower landed costs by working with an allied nation. For US components, this could be an opportunity to have your controller or financial team review your bill of materials and make sure that your organization is applying overhead costs correctly and not overlooking other expenses that could be contributing to your applicable overhead. Next slide, please. So I don't expect anybody to be able to read these. This is just a visual representation of 3 examples of self-attestation letters that a supplier could use to document compliance to BABA requirements. So basically, these are just on a supplier's letterhead and state that they certify that the product they're providing complies with the Build America, Buy America Act best practices for documenting compliance. And I can provide samples of this as a Word document, and that can be forwarded. But 2 of these documents were downloaded from the FEMA website that FEMA provides to manufacturers. And the other sample is from a lighting company back east that promotes a line of their products that comply with BABA requirements. Again, these examples, just like the bill of material worksheet, are just to provide a starting point for our clients. I do want to emphasize that each agency that you may be working for or with may have their own forms or format that they use for proof of compliance, and they will provide those to you. Next slide, please. So here's one of the slides I did want to make sure I included, showing examples that fall under the iron and steel products categories. construction materials, bridges and highway materials, water infrastructure, electrical transmission, and transportation components are some examples. And again, each federal agency will have more granular details regarding their domestic content requirements. In the case of iron and steel projects, they will most likely want to see the technical docs regarding the originating ingots and melt specifications, in addition to the self-attestation letter from your supplier. Next slide, please. So here we're showing some details of the construction material types, and the requirements is spelled out in the published BABA memorandum. The construction material must be manufactured in the US, including the production processes. So this category includes all the other types of construction materials that are not included in the other two categories. So if you recall, those were iron and steel and manufactured products. So as you can see, the material examples that fall under this category are drywall, lumber, glass, plastics, and non-ferrous metals. Next slide, please.
Barbara,
Yes,
what about cement?
cement falls under this category as well.
Okay.
Anything that isn't iron and steel or a manufactured product, like a lamp or you know, some kind of other furniture for a hospital or something. Where are we? Okay, so here are some examples of construction material projects. I won't read all of these, but in the first example, it specifies the requirements to provide glass windows for a government building. So, and it states that the raw glass must be produced and finished in the US, as well as be fully manufactured, tempered, and coated domestically to qualify under BABA. So if you're going to start with your silica sand, your limestone, you're going to create your molten product, and then you'll either float glass it or roll or draw it out into sheet glass, and then anneal and temper it, cutting and finishing it. Everything has to happen domestically. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the beginning, we had mentioned that we had clients, although they may not have a specific project they're currently working on, they wanted to be able to differentiate their company by developing a marketing strategy to promote a line of products that are BABA compliant. So this particular slide shows companies involved in manufacturing, construction, and infrastructure related products and how they're actively promoting their compliance to BABA front and center on their respective websites. Next slide, please. Similarly, here are examples of a few companies that are promoting that they have products or a suite of products to which they will attest are compliant to BABA requirements for manufactured products. So in these instances, the companies have created a specific line of products that are BABA compliant. These may cost more due to domestic raw material inputs, but they are manufactured alongside the other SKUs that may not be considered BABA compliant. But they want to make sure that they were front and center on their website, showing that they do have this for specifiers or designers or whatever, you know, architects, anybody specifying into an infrastructure project that requires BABA compliance. That is all I have for now. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for including me in the conversation, and I'll hand it back to Molly and field any questions you may have.
Well, I'm curious. I'm going to ask Joe a question. Do you have a question, Joe? Because with your name, Do It America, I'm wondering if you already are a BABA.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I do have a question. This seems to be tailor-made for us. So our company, Do It American Manufacturing. So we try to source everything as much as humanly possible in the United States. All the, you know, we buy pipe and steel from US domestic mills. My question is, like, we have some products where we buy a valve. If I buy a valve from, say, Uline or Airgas or something like that, are we required to find out if that valve is sourced from another country?
Yeah, you're going to ask them for a country of origin statement. If you, only for infrastructure. I mean, if is the valve the finished product or is it part of a subassembly or?
It's part of an assembly, so like a manifold, let's say, or something like that. Like a lot of our products, I think, would meet this no problem because like we'll take raw pipe, we'll cut it, and we'll make like a bollard or a guard post that protects gas meters. And we powder coat it domestically. We do everything domestically. We cut it here, all that stuff. It's a domestic mill, so I think that would pass with flying colors. It's just the ones where, like, if we have a meter regulator that we source the meter, like we don't make those, or we have a valve that we attach to it. So for those, for most of that product, I would say it'd be pretty close. But some of those valves and regulators are very expensive. So I guess for those valves and regulators, even if I buy it from a domestic company, I still need to get country of origin information.
Yes, right.
Okay.
So let's say you pick up your Granger McMaster car or Uline catalog, whatever it is, and you order part number yabba dabba do, and you ask them for a country of origin statement, and it says China. Now you roll up your bill of materials, you do a simple
Okay.
worksheet, and you determine, does that valve, if everything else is domestic, does that valve contribute to more than 45% of the cost of the finished good? And remember, you can roll up overhead, you can roll up freight.
Okay, so freight, overhead, because we don't do a lot of overhead absorption. What is
That's a missed opportunity and a discussion to have with your CPA.
But what is we have a very philosophical reason why we don't do that. But I'm wondering, like, what is I guess, what if we decided, okay, let's try to do some overhead absorption. Like, is there some kind of standard that we have to meet for how we are doing the overhead absorption, or are we just certifying that we've accurately done overhead absorption in our products? Like, how does that work?
Yes, and that's an internal thing. Your accounting department is going to know how to attribute, fully burdened overhead, excluding profit and labor, direct labor. So that's a conversation to have internally. If you're not applying 25, 30%, 35% overhead, a lot of companies just have a percentage that they attribute to, lights and power and water and all that good stuff. That's an accounting thing, and that I'm going to have to direct you in that way. Each agency, depending upon if you're working as a prime or if you're working on a flow down from another agency or another company, is going to provide you with the forms. It might not be, you might not need to create the self-attestation letter. I created an example, a few examples that I pulled off the internet from agencies. They might just give you a form and say, you attest that you have all, and you're going to keep a technical dossier for that bill of material. And you're going to be able to show, yeah, that valve came from China, but it was only 10% of the cost, or it was only 30% of the cost. And then you're going to show all the proof that everything else you have on that bill of materials is domestic.
Okay, and then we got into the weeds here, but actually backing up to the 50,000 foot view, because this caught my eye and I'm kind of new to it. Like, when you say agencies, like, what do you mean? There are certain agencies, and kind of like roughly which ones?
Well, like the Department of Transportation, the agencies that build your bridges, your hospitals, your railway, anything, water, I think.
So let's say it's the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation will be looking for some BABA compliant companies to source material, and I would connect with the Department of Transportation to go and apply and meet their requirements. Is that how it works?
Well, yeah, I mean, the same way you would try to get work from any other agencies. They have supplier portals that you can log on to, and you're going to be, and they're going to have a box and say, are your products BABA compliant? And you're going to be able to say yes.
Okay, so, but where do I go? Like, is there a centralized place to get BABA compliant? And then I would.
Oh, yeah. So this is a self-attestation. There is no agency. This isn't like ISO
Okay, that's
or
what I was
quality.
going for.
Yeah, this is no quality certification. There's no agency that does this. This is self-attestation
Got it.
to the fact sheets and the guidance.
Okay, great. I mean, that's all the questions I have, but that's very helpful. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Um,
Thank you for the question.
Shadab asks, is BABA only for infrastructure projects?
No. The simple question is, I mean, if you want to create like I said, people are creating BABA compliant products as a marketing tool, right? So that they can say, hey, because a lamp that you put in a hospital or a desk that you put in a hospital is not considered infrastructure. The building is, but the parts that go in it are not. But you have an opportunity then to market and say, listen, everything was more than 55% produced and manufactured domestically.
Okay, Shane, could you self-introduce yourself? And Shane has a question as well. He has his hand raised anyway.
Yeah, how's it going? I'm in my car, so sorry if it's there's like reverberation or anything. So I have a question about what it means to be a US component, because I was talking to another manufacturer the other day, and he was mentioning that to them, if they were to bring up, let's say, a raw piece of aluminum to their factory, and they have to stamp it, bend it, when it comes up is that's just the raw material, and then they're bending it and cutting it and welding it to make an actual component, and then that technically should be considered a US component, because you're taking that from that raw form to the US or to an actual component level material.
Yeah, so in the case of infrastructure, if that metal is going into a bridge, you're going to need the technical dossier. You're going to need the ASTM certification and we do have, believe it or not, steel mills that have product that is foreign originating and US originating. So you're going to pay a little bit more for the domestic input, more than likely, but they will give you an attestation and the technical docs that says that is a US piece of steel or tube that you bent and made into some fabulous thing that's going to go somewhere.
But is that the same for, so in regards to manufactured product though, and we're working with a different type of metal like aluminum?
Yeah, manufactured product, if it's not for infrastructure, the agency is going to tell you the details. You're gonna roll up the bill of materials and you're going to tell them this. Here's the bill of materials. They may want to see a copy of your bill of materials, and they may want to see additional details. But you're going to sign their self-attestation letter and say more than 55% is domestic, and they're going to tell you what they want to see from you.
Right. But am I on the right path that it's not technically a US component until I manufacture it at my facility to make it a true component?
Well, you have to remember there's a lot of these agencies. So there's a Made in the USA, they have their thresholds. So Buy American Act, which is generally a requirement to apply to directly federal procurement. That's what when the federal government buys for their own use, you have to comply with the Buy American Act. Thresholds are totally different. Right now it's 60%, no, 65%. It changed from 50% to 60%, 65% the calendar year 2024, and it's going to be moving to 75% domestic content in 2029. As of right now. And I can send you the difference between the Buy American Act, Buy American laws. And this is BABA, which has different thresholds. So it depends upon, and like we have a Made in California program at CMTC, and the thresholds are different.
Right. So I guess, again, I'm just trying to understand what the actual definition of a US component is. in regards, again, so like if I'm taking a raw piece of aluminum, but I'm getting it out of Mexico, and then I'm taking it to, because that in that form, it's not a component to my product yet. It's just a raw piece of material. And
Yeah,
then I
no.
form it,
Like I
put
said
it
in the
into my
presentation, they go down to the ingot. They want to see the metal you're melting. And they want a testimony that that is domestically mined, milled, produced.
Thank you.
Wow. Wally.
Well, usually these kind of programs, the penalty side would arise by a protestation from a competitor who would say, so-and-so was selling their goods and it really didn't meet, it wasn't legally domestic. Is there a complaint process? I mean, that's how a lot of.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the legal side of that. I would not want to be on the receiving end of someone of not being able to back up your.
Well, then on the actual documentation, is there enough? What would you suggest to a manufacturer in terms of record keeping of these attestations from their vendors, their sources of supply for a product? What do you have any guidelines yet as far as you should keep this for so many years or anything like that? In other words,
That's a great question. I don't know what the answer is to that. I can ask if this is like a 7 to 10 year thing, but you think about the metal going into a bridge, they want to make sure that's not compromised in any way, shape, or form, from international content. But I don't know what the penalty is or how long you're supposed to keep the documents once you've completed the project and you've signed off on all the agency stuff that they're going to give you under penalty of perjury, and you're signing this, and this is the documents, and you sign a thing that says, I believe that this is true and correct, and you sign it, but this is for the legal minds.
Right, but there's usually a penalty side to all of this stuff, non-compliance, and it's usually done by a squealer law of somebody, could be a disgruntled employee or it could be a competitor that would file. I mean, that's the way it is I was in the electric motor business, and that was the method. And it then they look for the lab tests. If the efficiency on a motor was not correct or was in error, then the justice, if somehow they saw whiteout on the test reports, then it goes to the Department of Justice, and then the DOJ goes after the manufacturer. That's the kind of there's a whole procedure on this stuff, So, but maybe this is too new to.
Well, it's definitely not new, but it's for the agency to determine on the legal side. Again, a lot of these, particularly if you're building a bridge or a road, there's no way to get that rebar out of that bridge or the beams out of that bridge. So they're going to do their due diligence. And like I said, they do go down to the ingot level. They want to know where it was mined, milled, and produced.
Well, I think that's worth looking up or trying to find if there's any body of law yet on this that would say, the document side, what will be.
What happens if you don't?
Well, there's going to be basically it's going to be your competitor that says, hey,
I can't speak to it, but I can't even imagine. I can't imagine somebody.
That's how the world turns on this kind of thing, is that your competitor is the one who complains and says you were really using foreign made product.
Then you definitely have to have your stuff.
Yeah, so then the documentation becomes super critical,
For sure.
Thanks, Wally. Ron raised his hand. Ron?
Yeah, Barbara, I'm trying to kind of think through all of this information a little bit from a cost benefit perspective, thinking about a company that might want to say upgrade its manufacturing process to include more American manufactured things for whatever reasons. And so I'm just trying to sort of catalog in my own mind, because it seems as though the cost side of this is a little bit gnarly. And then when you throw in the Made in America and some of these other programs, now it gets really a little bit crazy, at least in my small mind at this point. And then to look at the benefits. So I think it's something that manufacturers will certainly want to take a look at, but it feels a little obscure to me at this moment. It's really very, very well understood that from the patriotic side, it's like we ought to do this because it's a good thing to do. It's also I clearly understand from the market side, if people want to buy from you, then they want to buy American stuff, then it's like, well, here it is. This is obvious. But one of the reasons is going to be because you can bring this in at a cost that is at least the differential between an imported product and a domestic product is not so great that it could not be overcome. I did a little bit of homework before we started, and one of the benefits that I ran into was that there would be an ongoing market from the government. In other words, there would be a demand for this product because government would be buying these products. Now, to me, that's a pretty big statement to make because the government, while it's got an awful lot of buying power, the government doesn't necessarily have the ability to absorb an entire industry's metal, for instance. It's making lots of stuff, but would it really create a lot more demand for a particular company? So that's a pretty complex question.
Well, Ron, it's the bipartisan infrastructure law that is the law that says that the cement and steel in the infrastructure projects has to be made in America. So that's a pretty big chunk of the bipartisan infrastructure law was probably a $1 trillion act. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not small potatoes.
So is that government purchases only, or is that all purchases?
Well, it flows down from, in other words, there would be contractors. That's why we're talking about the effect on the manufacturers. There would be contractors that bid on building a bridge or building, so those materials are supposed to be made in, cement. The cement and steel have
so you're saying it's mandated.
Yes.
That bridge be built.
Well, if it's being paid for under the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Right, but so I will tell you from having exposure, and I'm on the national network, these supplier scouting opportunities are posted as an opportunity to, you post an opportunity on the national network for 30 days. They don't like you to post it for 15 days. And you say, the reason for this is I need a BABA compliant solar panel. Okay, well, we're not manufacturing solar panels exactly complete with the optimizers and all that domestically yet. But what's happening is because over the past 3 or 4 months, almost all the opportunities were BABA compliance, BABA compliance, BABA compliance, BABA compliance required. Then manufacturing, we're taking note of all of that, and we're providing that feedback to our manufacturers and saying, can anybody please make a Widget-Mahoo number 2? And some guy, says he'll tool up for that or whatever it is, or he has something that he's making similar. So it is then noticed by the agency, under the Department of Commerce, is going, wow, we really need to bolster this sector because this is being posted a lot. And I mentioned at the top of my presentation is that we do not have the infrastructure yet, but this is, and it might take a minute or 5 years. You can't just, snap your fingers and build a plant. You guys are all, I'm a manufacturing old-timey gal, and you guys are all in manufacturing, you understand the complexities of setting up a factory. But that's why they have waivers for right now. And in order to apply for a waiver, they're gonna, you know, ask for as much documentation as they can.
Yeah. Well, and I think you make a great point, Barbara. And of course, you know, if you're gearing up to, you know, rebuild a factory or add on or build a new factory in order to be able to take advantage of this, it's, you know, you have to be pretty darn good at understanding what the demand in that particular market's going to be. You know, what's the demand for bridges, and, you know, how much material will be utilized, et cetera, because you're going to be making multi-millions of $1 million investments in new plant in order to be able to do some of this stuff. So I mean, all I'm suggesting is that this is a fairly complex road to maneuver. And I don't think that's what you guys do, but I hope some consultants out there are getting really good at comparing all these programs to help manufacturers figure out the cost benefit ratios. You know,
Well, yeah, and we are doing a lot of that. I mean, your point is amazing.
So are you working with manufacturers to be able to work through some of these questions? Oh,
right. So what happened is 2 years ago, there was a grant that all the MEP centers, you know, there's an MEP center in every state, including Puerto Rico, and all the MEP centers, they created a program called SCOIN, which is the grant that I was hired under to CMTC. It's a 2-year grant. It's called Supply Chain Optimization Intelligence Network. Iffy on the intelligence part, but so our jobs were to take a look at our respective states and map for critical sectors, and then provide that feedback back to the Department of Commerce in quarterly reports. So I mapped California for critical sectors, semiconductors, aerospace and defense, AV, EV, battery tech, critical minerals, biomanufacturing. So I tried to take a look at where all the pockets were, who were all the companies, are they having any interruptions in their supply chain? And this was all being rolled back up to the Department of Commerce in reports, and then reported to Congress to tell them, you know, all the groovy stuff that's going on in our states. I don't need to tell you, California is the 4th largest economy by GDP in the world. So we're bigger than any other MEP center by almost 3 times.
Yeah.
It's a big state, and this is, you know, the light, you can't, like I said, you can't just wave a magic wand and wow, okay, now we're, you know, robust manufacturing sectors that we had been sending away for so long. My specialty is global sourcing and procurement. So yes, the 2-year grant, I'm assisting all manufacturers with their end-to-end supply chain needs. I'm doing a lot of, I'm trying to domestically source, and in lieu of that, near shore and then friend shore. I'm moving a ton of stuff from China to Vietnam, to India, to Malaysia, to Mexico, to Canada, to South America. There's plenty of countries that don't want to nuke us. So, so that's what I'm doing. Would I love to match a California manufacturer with a California supplier? Yes. Or a California supplier, a manufacturer with some other, you know, a domestic supplier across the US? Yes. Is it likely that's going to happen in a smooth and orderly fashion? Not exactly. I mean, I'm telling everybody, front load your inventory now. I've never talked about tariffs so much in my entire life. It used to be you would get one harmonized tariff schedule a year, one revision, you never looked at it again. It's June, we're on revision 15, and we've had 2 revisions in June. So it's a lot. Uncertainty is the new certainty, and we can only control what's within our own 4 walls.
Yeah.
Right. So I do a lot of talking about how to manage external risks internally.
Well, I would say thank you for that, and you had mentioned that you had some charts and so forth for comparisons, and I would think that those kinds of things would be really valuable for manufacturers. And in addition, you know, for the different kinds of programs and what the requirements might be in a fairly simple comparative, you know, chart. And in addition to that, the market studies that you have worked on would be extremely valuable just so that manufacturers could kind of peruse them and see where the markets might be in the areas that they are, that would do a lot to help mitigate the sort of the fear to wade into some of these things. It's like, well, there's a big market here. We can take advantage of this. And so now we're ready to take the time and effort and do some consulting to figure this out. Without getting that market understood, it's a little bit tough for manufacturers to wrap their head around all these things, even though they might just want to. But so thank you very much, Barbara.
Wally,
Great
Joe
question.
raised his hand before you did. So Joe, unmute yourself. You had another question?
Yeah, this will be real quick. So just to make sure, because this is a big part of it. So direct labor, no, we can't include that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just want to be
Which is
sure.
lunacy to me, because that's part of your
I mean,
costs,
that's
but
kind of the big elephant in the room.
it doesn't ship with the product.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I had. And I got to run. Thank you for putting this on. Really appreciate it.
Great questions, Joe. Thank you for participating.
I just wanted to say before people drop off here, that we have recorded this and we will be posting it in our library of video recordings for if anybody wants to take a look at it again or refer to somebody else. And we
please give out my email address. I can be reached at bwag@cmtc.com if you have any additional questions, you want additional forms. Sorry, Molly.
No, we're running at the end of our time, so I wanted to get these important things in, and I was just about ready to say that, Barbara, so perfect timing. And I want to thank you also, Barbara, for the time you put into it. It's one of the more interesting programs that we've heard. So everybody's welcome to stay on a little bit longer. Wally was going to ask a question.
Well, I was going to say, it's sort of in response to Ron's, kind of wondering, is there really a market for the Buy America, Build America? I think is kind of what you're asking. The electric vehicle that's made, let's say a Tesla, or, they qualify for a $7,500 rebate per vehicle, but the battery's got to be made in the US and the lithium has to be sourced from the United States. So, for example, in a project that we're recently seeking a grant with, it was in conjunction with the University of California, San Diego, and UC Riverside, and Cal State San Diego. In that proposal, there is was a component in the Imperial Valley to create a lithium characterization lab by the Cal State or UC to characterize the lithium so that you could certify that it came from the United States in case Lithium Valley gets built out as it's hoped to do. So right now they would have to send materials quite a distance, and the University of California was hoping to say, hey, you can just ship it right here in Southern California and we will characterize it, and in some way you get the credit that it was mined and produced here in Southern California. Okay, so that's important. It's worth $7,500 to Tesla or to General Motors or whoever needs those that material. Okay.
And the main thing I've been telling manufacturers is take a quick look first. Just look at your bill of material. It's a marketing opportunity. So specifiers, architects, contractors, designers will refer you for projects as a marketing opportunity, saying, listen, Build America, Buy America. Yeah. And it's more than 55% domestic content.
Well, go ahead, Barb.
I was going to say, please reach out to me if you have any additional questions. If I don't know the answer, I will find someone who does.
Great. Very interesting, Barbara. Thank you.
Yeah, Tony, contact me. I just saw your chat. I sit on the board of the San Fernando Valley Association for Supply Chain Management. So I'd love to talk to you. We should work together sometime.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you, Barbara. On behalf.
Thanks for having me so much. It was a pleasure meeting you all.
Yeah.
Good to see you all. Hope to see you at an event in the future. Take care.